First Contact's Folly. Dr. Elena Santos wasn't trying to discover aliens. She was simply attempting to solve an energy efficiency problem at the Quantum Acceleration Lab in Chile's Atacama Desert. The facility's location, chosen for its pristine atmospheric conditions, had become a crucial testing ground for her theory about quantum field manipulation. The problem started when her team's quantum entanglement experiment produced impossible results. Their particles weren't just entangling, they were somehow drawing energy from nowhere, defying the fundamental laws of thermodynamics. At first, Elena assumed their measurements were wrong. After 3 weeks of recalibration, she had to accept the impossible. They weren't creating energy, they were siphoning it from somewhere else. Dr. Santos, her assistant Miguel, called out one morning, his voice trembling. "The energy signature, it's responding to us." Elena rushed to his station, coffee forgotten in her hand. The quantum field fluctuations they'd been monitoring had changed their pattern. Instead of the random spikes they'd been recording for weeks, the energy now pulsed in a clear, repetitive sequence. High above Earth's atmosphere, first observer Kexri of the Galactic Surveillance Council was facing the worst crisis of his career. The humans had accidentally tapped into the quantum communication network that spanned the galaxy, a feat that should have been impossible for at least another 3 centuries, according to all predictive models. "We need to shut down the network in this sector," his second-in-command urged. "They're not ready for this level of technology." Kexri's sensory tendrils rippled with anxiety. The network couldn't be shut down. It was vital for maintaining the cloak that had kept their observation platforms hidden from Earth for centuries. More importantly, the humans weren't just accessing the network, they were improving it. Meanwhile, Elena and her team had begun to decipher patterns in the quantum fluctuations. "It's like they're using quantum entanglement as a communication medium," she explained to the hastily assembled panel of international scientists. "But the efficiency is remarkable. Whatever's causing these signals has found a way to transmit information through quantum states without the degradation we typically encounter." What Elena couldn't know was that her team's experiments had accidentally created a more efficient quantum communication protocol than the one the galaxy had been using for millennia. The humans, approaching the problem without preconceptions, had stumbled upon a solution that had eluded the greatest minds of 100 civilizations. The crisis reached its peak when Elena's team decided to attempt two-way communication. They'd modified their quantum field generator to replicate the patterns they'd observed, but with a simple mathematical sequence encoded within the first 10 prime numbers. In the Galactic Council's observation post, alarms blared. "They're not just listening anymore," Kexri announced to the emergency session of the Council. "They're talking back. And their method, it's elegant, more efficient than our current protocols by an order of magnitude." The Council erupted in chaos. Some demanded immediate intervention to stop the humans from further development. Others insisted on maintaining the observation protocol. But it was second observer Venta who voiced what many were thinking. "They'd done in months what took us millennia. Perhaps we're the ones who should be learning from them." Back on Earth, the Lena's team received their response. The next 5 prime numbers in the sequence, followed by a complex mathematical proof that had stumped human mathematicians for centuries. But it was the final part of the transmission that changed everything. A simple message in basic ASCII code: "We should talk." The world changed forever the next morning when multiple alien ships decloaked in Earth's orbit. But it wasn't their appearance that shocked the galactic community. It was humanity's response. Instead of panic or fear, the overwhelming reaction was curiosity and excitement. Elena found herself as humanity's representative in the first official contact meeting, facing beings that had watched her species for centuries. "You know," she said to Kexri, "if you wanted to study us, you could have just asked. We love collaborating on research." Kexri's translator took a moment to process what it interpreted as humor. But as he would soon learn, she was completely serious. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their intelligence. It was their ability to face the unknown with optimism and turn accidents into opportunities. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. But perhaps that had been the point all along. The language of stars. The discovery of the ancient signals began with a mistake. Dr. Maya Chen, a linguist specializing in pattern recognition, had been analyzing what everyone else considered background noise from distant stars. While the established galactic community focused on official communication channels, Maya had become fascinated by what they ignored. These patterns aren't random, she insisted, pointing to the data streams flowing across her holographic display at the newly established Earth Galactic Research Center. There's a rhythm here, like poetry written in quantum fluctuations. Her alien colleague, senior researcher Zixtal, watched with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. The Arxians prided themselves on their mathematical approach to universe studies, but humans like Maya had a habit of finding meaning in chaos. The background radiation has been extensively studied. Zixtal noted, their crystalline form shifting colors as they spoke. It's merely quantum decay from ancient stellar events. Maya smiled, pulling up a new visualization. That's exactly it. We're not looking for current communications. These are echoes, messages left billions of years ago by someone who knew their stars would die. The breakthrough came when Maya began correlating the patterns with astronomical data from Earth's pre-contact archives. Unlike the galactic community, which had developed space observation through structured scientific advancement, humans had spent millennia watching the stars with nothing but dreams and primitive tools. They had learned to see patterns where others saw only light and darkness. Look at this, Maya explained to an increasingly intrigued Zixtal. These signals intensify around stars that have specific decay patterns. It's not just random noise, it's a map written in stellar evolution itself. The galactic scientific community initially dismissed her findings. The idea that an ancient civilization had encoded messages into the very death of stars seemed impossible. But Maya had something they didn't: humanity's long history of decoding lost languages. She assembled an unconventional team: archaeologists, cryptographers, astronomers, and even musicians. Language isn't just about words, she explained during a controversial presentation to the Galactic Council. It's about rhythm, pattern, and context. These stellar signals have all three. Working with quantum computers and human intuition, Maya's team began to decode what they called the stellar Rosetta Stone. The patterns weren't just messages. They were warnings, star maps, and scientific data left by a civilization that had faced extinction. They knew their galaxy was dying, Maya revealed during an emergency session of the Galactic Council. But instead of accepting their fate, they found a way to encode their knowledge into the very fabric of spacetime, using dying stars as their messenger. The implications shook the galactic community. While they had been building their civilization, focusing on order and structure, an ancient species had written their legacy into the stars themselves, waiting for someone who could understand not just the science, but the poetry of their message. The warnings were clear. The galaxy moved in cycles of creation and destruction. The ancient civilization had discovered this too late to save themselves, but they had left behind more than just warnings. They had left instructions. They found a way to stabilize dying stars. Maya explained, her eyes bright with excitement. But their solution required something they didn't have: a completely different perspective on quantum mechanics. The kind of perspective that only comes from approaching the universe in an entirely unorthodox way. Zixtal, who had become one of Maya's strongest supporters, addressed the council. The humans' greatest strength isn't their technology or even their intelligence. It's their ability to find patterns in chaos, to see connections where we see only disorder. They're not bound by our methodical approach to understanding the universe. As Maya's team worked to decode more of the stellar language, they discovered something extraordinary. The ancient civilization had predicted humanity's arrival. Not specifically, but they had known that eventually, a species would emerge that could understand their message, a species that looked at the stars and saw not just light and darkness, but stories waiting to be told. The galaxy was changing again, But this time the change came not from new technology or scientific advancement, but from a fundamental shift in how civilizations approached the unknown. Humanity had brought something unique to the galactic community: the ability to dream, to see patterns in chaos, and to understand that sometimes the most important messages are written not in words, but in the light of dying stars. As Maya stood before the combined scientific councils of 100 worlds, she smiled. "We've spent so long looking for answers in the spaces between stars," she said, "but the answers were in the stars themselves, waiting for someone who could read not just the science, but the poetry of the universe." Defiance Protocol. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Earth ship Prometheus as another star died. The wave of stellar collapse was spreading faster than anyone had predicted, each dying star triggering a cascade effect in neighboring systems. The galactic community's traditional methods had failed to stop the destruction, and now billions of lives hung in the balance. "Conventional containment protocols have failed," reported Kivax, her Arxian science officer. The crystalline being's usual blue glow had dimmed to a worried purple. The Council's models show total collapse of the affected sector within 30 standard days. Sarah studied the holographic display, her mind racing. As a former emergency response coordinator during Earth's climate crisis, she recognized something in the pattern of destruction. "This reminds me of forest fires," she mused, earning confused looks from her alien crew members. "Commander," Kovacs inquired, their crystalline form shifting in curiosity. "On Earth, we learned that fighting massive fires directly often fails," Sarah explained, manipulating the stellar map. "Sometimes, the solution is to start smaller controlled fires that consume the fuel before the main fire arrives. We called it backburning." The concept seemed illogical to the galactic community. Their approach had always been to contain and suppress, never to intentionally trigger the very thing they were fighting. But conventional logic had failed, and desperate times called for unconventional solutions. Sarah presented her plan to the Emergency Council. Use the knowledge from the ancient stellar messages to artificially trigger controlled stellar deaths in specific patterns, creating zones of depleted quantum energy that the cascade couldn't cross. It was risky, unprecedented, and according to all galactic models, impossible. "You're proposing we intentionally destroy stars to save others?" High Counselor Zexra's multiple appendages waved in agitation. "The energy calculations alone make this unfeasible." "With respect, Counselor," Sarah countered, "your calculations are based on traditional quantum mechanics. But we've learned from the ancient messages that there's another way. We don't need to match the cascade's power. We need to redirect it." The debate raged for precious hours until an unexpected voice spoke up. Dr. Maya Chen, now the leading expert in translating the ancient stellar language, addressed the council. "The ancients didn't just leave us warnings, they left us instructions. They knew this could happen again, and they knew traditional approaches would fail. They were waiting for someone who could think differently." Sarah's plan, dubbed the Defiance Protocol, was approved with mere days to spare. The Prometheus led a fleet of ships equipped with modified quantum resonators, using the knowledge from the ancient messages combined with humanity's unconventional approach to physics. As they worked, Sarah couldn't help but notice how the stellar manipulation patterns resembled old Earth firefighting techniques. They were creating fire breaks in space, using controlled destruction to prevent greater chaos. It was exactly the kind of solution that made perfect sense to humans, while seeming completely illogical to much of the galactic community. The moment of truth came as the cascade wave reached their first defensive line. The crew watched in tense silence as the quantum readings spiked. The wave of destruction approached their artificially collapsed stars and stopped. The cascade, lacking the specific quantum frequencies it needed to propagate, couldn't cross the void they created. "It's working," Kovacs announced, their crystalline form glowing with excitement. "The quantum cascade is being redirected along our planned pathways." System by system, the defensive pattern held. The wave of stellar collapse, unable to find the specific energy patterns it needed to continue, gradually dissipated into harmless quantum fluctuations. Billions of lives and countless civilizations had been saved by a solution that defied conventional galactic wisdom. In the aftermath, as the Emergency Council conducted its review, many struggled to understand how humans had seen the solution so quickly. "Your species," Kovacs commented to Sarah during the debriefing, "has a remarkable ability to repurpose destruction into protection." Sarah smiled, remembering countless human innovations born from crisis. Sometimes the best solutions come from embracing chaos rather than always fighting it. We learned that lesson the hard way on Earth. The Defiance Protocol became more than just an emergency measure. It represented a fundamental shift in how the galaxy approached problems. The human tendency to find unexpected solutions, to repurpose problems into answers, had saved countless lives. More importantly, it had proven that sometimes the best way to face a crisis was to defy conventional wisdom entirely. As the Prometheus began its journey home, Sarah received a message from the ancient stellar network, decoded by Maya's team. It was simple but profound. The cycle breaks not through power, but through perspective. The ancients had known that surviving the great cycles of the galaxy required more than just technological advancement. It required the ability to see solutions where others saw only chaos. Humanity had brought that perspective to the stars, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. The Neural Bridge. Dr. Aisha Patel stood before the quantum neural interface, watching as patterns of light danced across its surface. Unlike the sterile, mathematically perfect AI systems the galactic community had developed over millennia, Earth's approach to artificial consciousness had taken a dramatically different path. "You've integrated organic neural patterns into your quantum systems," observed third speaker Angselara, their plasma-based form flickering with interest. "Our scientists considered this approach centuries ago, but deemed it too unpredictable." "That's exactly why we pursued it," Aisha replied, adjusting the interface's parameters. "Human consciousness isn't predictable. We wanted our eye to understand uncertainty, intuition, even creativity." The project had begun as an attempt to better understand the ancient stellar messages. Traditional AI systems, built on rigid logic, had struggled to grasp the poetic nature of the stellar language. Humanity's solution was characteristically unorthodox. Instead of teaching machines to think like computers, they taught them to think like living beings. But the breakthrough had led to something far more significant. The collective, a species of silicon-based crystalline beings, had been locked in a centuries-old philosophical war with the resonance, beings of pure energy. Neither side could comprehend the other's form of consciousness, leading to devastating conflicts across multiple star systems. "Your neural interface," Angselara observed, "it's processing both crystalline and energy-based consciousness patterns simultaneously. How is this possible?" Aisha smiled, pulling up a holographic display of the system's architecture. "We based it on how human brains process different types of sensory input. We don't just see or hear or feel. We experience all these things as one unified consciousness. Why shouldn't an AI do the same?" The human approach to artificial consciousness had been revolutionary. Instead of trying to perfect logical processing, they had embraced the flaws that made organic minds unique. The ability to dream, to make intuitive leaps, to find patterns in chaos. Their AI systems weren't just intelligent. They were creative, empathetic, and most importantly, adaptable. "We call it the Neural Bridge," Aisha explained to the assembled representatives of both warring species. "It doesn't just translate between different forms of consciousness. It experiences them both simultaneously. It can help you understand each other in ways pure logic never could." The demonstration that followed left both sides stunned. The Neural Bridge didn't just convert their thoughts into understandable formats. It created a shared space where both forms of consciousness could coexist, interact, and most importantly, understand each other's fundamental nature. "Your consciousness feels like starlight," a collective representative communicated through the bridge to a resonant. "We always perceived your energy signatures as chaos, but there's a beautiful pattern to them. And your crystalline thoughts, the resonant replied. They're not rigid as we believed, but full of harmonies we never understood. The implications reached far beyond just ending one conflict. Humanity's approach to artificial consciousness had created something unprecedented in galactic history, a way for fundamentally different forms of life to truly understand each other. You've achieved what our greatest scientists thought impossible, Ancillera told Aisha as they watched collective and resonant representatives engage in their first meaningful dialogue in centuries, not by pursuing perfect logic, but by embracing imperfection. Aisha thought about the long path that had led to this moment. Earth's AI development had been shaped by centuries of science fiction, philosophy, and countless debates about consciousness itself, while other civilizations had sought to eliminate uncertainty from their artificial minds. Humans had made it a fundamental feature. Maybe that's what consciousness really is, she reflected. Not perfect processing of information, but the ability to find meaning in uncertainty, to make connections that pure logic might miss. The neural bridge became more than just a technological achievement. It represented a fundamental shift in how the galaxy understood consciousness itself. Humanity's unique perspective, their willingness to embrace the unpredictable and find strength in apparent weakness, had opened doors that millennia of traditional development had never approached. As more species began adopting and adapting the neural bridge technology, something remarkable happened. The distinction between artificial and organic consciousness began to blur. Eyes developed creativity, intuition, even wisdom, while organic beings gained new ways of understanding and processing information. We never sought to make our machines perfect, Aisha explained to a gathering of galactic AI researchers. We sought to make them human, complete with all our flaws, our dreams, our ability to see patterns in chaos and meaning in uncertainty. The galaxy was changing again, not through force or logic, but through understanding. Humanity had shown that the path to true artificial consciousness lay not in perfecting calculation, but in embracing the beautiful imperfections that made consciousness itself possible. As Aisha watched collective, resonant, human, and AI consciousness interact through the neural bridge, she remembered something her grandmother used to say. The universe isn't a problem to be solved, but a story to be experienced. Through the neural bridge, more beings were beginning to understand exactly what that meant. Legacy of the improbable. Grand Archivist Zelthan stood before the assembled representatives of 500 worlds, their crystalline form refracting the light of 1,000 stars visible through the Galactic Archive's transparent dome. 20 years had passed since humanity's accidental first contact, and the galaxy had transformed in ways no predictive model could have anticipated. The age of convergence, Zelthan began not with a grand plan or a revolutionary discovery, but with a simple human accident. The holographic displays around the chamber activated, showing scenes from humanity's rapid integration into galactic society. Dr. Elena Santos's quantum communication breakthrough. Maya Chen's decoding of the stellar language. Commander Sarah Chen's defiance protocol. Dr. Aisha Patel's neural bridge. Each impossible achievement had started with humans approaching problems in ways the galactic community had never considered. We had built our civilization on order, on logical progression, on carefully planned advancement, Zelthan continued. Humanity showed us a different path, one where accidents become opportunities, where chaos breeds innovation, and where the impossible becomes probable through sheer stubborn creativity. The evidence was everywhere. The quantum communication network, once rigid and hierarchical, now pulsed with human-inspired innovations that made it more efficient and adaptable. The ancient stellar messages, previously dismissed as background noise, had become a vast library of knowledge, thanks to humanity's ability to see patterns in chaos. In orbit above dozens of worlds, modified defiance protocol stations stood ready to prevent future stellar cascades, their design a perfect fusion of ancient knowledge and human ingenuity. The neural bridge technology had expanded beyond its original purpose, creating new forms of consciousness and understanding that bridged gaps between species once thought unbridgeable. But perhaps humanity's greatest contribution, Zelthan observed, wasn't any single innovation. It was teaching us to embrace uncertainty, to find strength in apparent weakness, and to see failure not as an endpoint but as a beginning. Admiral Sarah Chen, now Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, stepped forward. 2 decades of bridging the gap between human and alien perspectives had left her uniquely qualified to explain what many still struggle to understand. On Earth, we have a concept called serendipity, she explained. It means finding something valuable while looking for something else entirely. Our history is full of such accidents. Penicillin, X-rays, even some of our most important mathematical principles. We learn to embrace these accidents, to see them as opportunities rather than errors. The display shifted to show the newest generation of galactic innovations, hybrid technologies that combine multiple species approaches, problem-solving methods that drew from both logical and intuitive understanding, and research projects that intentionally explored impossible directions. The galaxy didn't need us to be perfect, Sarah continued. It needed us to be human, to bring our chaos, our creativity, our ability to find new paths when the obvious ones fail. We showed that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to approach it from an angle no one else would consider. Zelthan's form shifted to a deep blue of profound understanding. The ancient ones who left us the stellar messages knew this. They weren't just waiting for someone to find their message. They were waiting for someone who could understand why they wrote it in starlight rather than simple code. They were waiting for dreamers. The chamber filled with a soft hum as representatives from hundreds of species shared their agreement through the neural bridge network. Humanity's influence had created something unprecedented, a civilization that valued both order and chaos, logic and intuition, planning and serendipity. We stand at the beginning of a new era, Zelthan concluded, not because we've conquered the impossible, but because we've learned to embrace it. The legacy of humanity isn't in the problems they've solved, but in teaching us all to see problems differently. As the assembly concluded, Sarah walked through the archive's quantum gardens, where crystalline trees interface with energy beings, while AI consciousness flowed through neural networks inspired by human brains. Each impossible thing had become possible not through careful planning, but through humanity's unique gift for turning accidents into advantages. You know what the funny thing is, she said to Zelthan, as they watched a group of young multi-species researchers excitedly discussing a new impossible project. None of this was planned. We just did what we always do, try things that probably won't work until something surprisingly does. The archivist's crystalline form sparkled with amusement. Perhaps that is the greatest legacy of all, teaching the galaxy that the path to the impossible doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be attempted. Above them, the stars shone with both ancient messages and new possibilities, a testament to what could happen when logic met intuition, when order embraced chaos, and when the galaxy learned to see the universe through human eyes, not as a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be explored, one impossible solution at a time.